Hello, everyone. This is Father Michael Tischel,
And this is Stratis Papageorgiou,
and we are
an imperfect
Perfect Podcast.
podcast.
Cue music. Strati, it's been a little while.
Oh, hi, Father.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm just dandy. It's a beautiful day out here in Marietta, Georgia. It's like a perfect 70-degree fall day.
No, here it's going into the 60s.
Wow. And here you are still in
Serbia.
Serbia. Da.
Duh.
That's wonderful. And
Yeah.
how's everything going over there?
Great. The weather is getting colder by the day.
Yeah.
Every day gets a little colder, so buying winter stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Nice. And I've seen you've put up some really awesome new vlogs. You're calling
travel videos. Yeah. Did you like the new one?
I did. It was beautiful. Just making me want to go there even more now.
And there was another place we went to right after it. That place you need a drone. It's an incredible like fortress monastery. I mean, the walls are huge. I mean, they must have redid it or something. I don't know because it was because it's like new. And it's called Manasya. And I'm not sure if they're going to see anything from that anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the next one will be from the monastery of Lelic, where Saint Justin, not Justin Popovich, Velimirovich.
Oh, nice.
He's buried there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I did Saint Justin Popovich's. I went there too. The same day.
Oh, really?
Nearby each other.
Neat. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Indeed.
Cool. Well, here we are.
Indeed.
And we were talking about what we're going to be talking about. And so let's talk about what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
And so for the topic for our talk today
is
curiosity. Did it kill the cat, or is it a gateway to mystery and awe?
That's a good question. Right off the bat, can we say that it was only hubris that killed Icarus, or was it also curiosity?
Ooh, yeah. Say more about that. It's been a while since I've read it.
Oh, I haven't read it either, so I don't know the source material.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I mean, I've heard it before, I'm sure, but it's been a long time. But I'm just thinking, was he also curious what was all the way up there?
Right.
And then he
got too close, and then
it's an allegory for the ancient Hellenic world. Don't try to outdo the gods.
Right.
They're the gods. You're human. Stay put. Stay where you're supposed to be.
Okay. So that's a good. I think that's a really good question, and I think it gets at also from a Christian and theological standpoint. We know, like a lot of the patristic writers, the church fathers, especially in the 4th century, 3rd, 4th century, with the kind of combating of various heresies, in particular, a heresy known as Eunomianism, which was a sort of an offshoot of the Arian heresy. They essentially, Eunomius and his predecessor, Etius, basically claimed that you could know God's essence by this term or word, agenitos, or unbegotten. And so whenever the fathers sort of around that time talk about like, don't go meddling too much into the essence of God. They're kind of combating this heresy, but it's very clear that they're saying like there's a certain line that we can't cross as far as our knowledge of the supreme being of God. And if you try to do that, ultimately you're going to be harmed, and similar kind of idea that you're going, you get too close to the sun and your wings are going to melt. And so that, I think that's a fundamental principle, both, in ancient Greece, but also carried through into Orthodox theology. But then, there's the other kind of side of it, which is like, so I used to work with this program for high school students before coming to Marietta. And I remember one time, one of the kids got up in the middle of the program, and it's kind of like a camp, but it's also has kind of like an academic theology component. So it's kind of like, sort of like a mini seminary experience almost. And so like the kids sort of like get a little bit of a taste of like Orthodox theology, more so than they would have ever gotten sort of at a normal parish kind of level. And so a lot of them like, and they're pretty bright kids anyway, but they're like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Like they get really super excited about it. And this one kid stood up and he was like, I always heard the Orthodox saying like, it's a mystery and like everything's a mystery and stuff like that. And he was like, I started to say that about like everything. And now I'm just realizing that like a lot of the stuff that I said that about, it was just that I didn't actually know, like I just didn't know like, the details about like, the 7 ecumenical councils or, it's like, so it's like, there are certain things that like, yes, it's a mystery. And then there are other things that's like, it's just because I don't know it. Just because I don't know something doesn't necessarily, it makes it a mystery to me, but it doesn't necessarily mean, so it's like, like what, so yeah, maybe we could kind of parse that out a little bit as far as like this understanding that like knowing my place as a human versus, and then, but also just like not being like apathetic and just calling everything a mystery kind of thing.
Right. Well, that goes to the same sort of, as they call it in America, sort of. Right.
Yayology
Yayology or whatever they call it.
Right.
Where we're like, just don't ask questions.
Right.
Okay, Yaya didn't know. Yaya means grandmother. Didn't know the answer, so she just said, don't ask questions.
Right.
And that flew. It flew back.
That's right.
Back when she was young.
Right.
Because back then, you didn't need to know a lot of things to carry out your faith or to, you weren't being, you didn't have all of these, you weren't in the United States with all these different religions and all these different faiths. And, you understood the simple thing, the basic things, and that's all you needed to know. And that's a good thing, actually, I think.
Right.
It's a good thing.
What is good? What's good about that? What would you say?
Keeps your brain from being full of so many things and stuff, and like kind of more focus on what the prayer, the whatever.
But isn't the point of life to know as much as you possibly can?
Right, and I think that's
every piece of information, like isn't
right, and that's the very modern. I don't know if it's too modern, actually. Scholastic, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. It's very Western, maybe ancient Greek. Sort of the acquisition of knowledge of this life.
Right.
And I think I know I'm prone to it. I know that I'm not immune to it. I definitely like knowing stuff. I feel good about myself when I know it. But there is something to the old school Yaya who knows how to make the prosperon at church, and she does, but and she knows how to make the goliva, and she knows how to light the candili, and she,
exactly.
She knows the prayers, and and she becomes sanctified doing that her whole life.
So those simple illiterate people that never even had access to these things.
Oh yeah.
Like, are they missing out? Like, are they somehow, because they're not able to receive this intellectual enlightenment, are they somehow sort of like defective as human beings. You know what I mean?
I think there is a danger. I was actually just talking to someone about this. There's a danger nowadays with being like that too much, because nowadays a lot of bad stuff comes in.
Right.
The simple people unfortunately get tricked.
Yeah.
By the things that are bad.
Sure.
In a story in the life of Saint Arsenius of the Cappadocian, a Protestant, they were in the middle of Asia Minor, and the Protestant came to the village to proselytize, and Saint Arsenius went right up to him and was like, "Look, we already have a Muslim in the village. That's bad enough."
Right.
The people here, they're simple.
Right.
Basically, St. Paisius, as he explains it, was that, the people there won't know the difference.
Right.
They won't know the difference. They'll say, "Oh, he's a Christian. Oh, we're Christians too." They won't know that no, he's, it's not that simple.
Right.
So yeah. So it is
and I think that's a good point. Like, because of the kind of globalization of the world, and in general, just like the proliferation of different religious ideas and philosophies and whatnot, and the mixing, and ideas. Period. There's a danger in being, even in the simple-minded, and also I think you could say, like, very few of us could actually claim the true, like, innocent, like, simplicity of a village. Like, there's like probably like 0.01 of the population would actually, like, be able to say, like, I truly have no access to this, like, broader understanding of things. Like, I'm illiterate. Like, I've grown up in this village and I know nothing else. So it's
nowadays.
Right. So so we, in a sense, we've lost that innocence, which is a double-edged sword, right? Because, like, on the one hand, there's the loss of this kind of, like, simplicity, of this kind of integrity of a wisdom and an earthy sort of connection to life that's more kind of visceral and, like, intuitive and salt of the earth. Yeah. And on the other hand, there's some benefit in it because of kind of what you said, like, people can get swayed easily, and
and then we're seeing it a lot with conspiracy theories.
Yes, right.
In the people of the church, especially here in Greece and Cyprus, like, there's still kind of, although there's more access to things and they have access to it, they're still kind of like, not like an American, right? Like,
right.
They still kind of believe, not to be insulting to anyone, they still kind of believe more than the average American might, just because of how the average American knows what fake news is.
Yeah, right.
Like, since Nixon, Americans have not believed anything.
Right.
For the most part, there are exceptions.
Well, and again, that skepticism and that distrust is a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like, on the one hand, like, like, there are a lot of corrupt and kind of folks that abuse their power and things like that, and being able to discern that. But then on the other hand, living your life without trust and without without any sense of
and awe,
right? Yeah.
And awe, where you started off.
Yeah, exactly. So that brings us to that other element of curiosity, right? That it's, there's the sort of meddlesome, curiosity of just, like, or, like, it's almost like this addictive quality of, like, constantly trying to acquire knowledge, information, through, like, news sources and whatnot, which is, like, again, like, there's, like, an addictive element to it. And then there's the element of sort of a sort of a sense of wonder, a sense of awe.
What's that thing you were saying, like, mystery,
right?
And I feel like that's lacking for my life a little bit, like that way I felt out of place or a thing when I was, like, a little kid, like, what's happening now? I'm like, the thing, and the other thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does it every year, and whatever, who cares?
Yeah.
And, like, walking. But when you're a kid,
Yep.
Why do clouds do that? I'm not gonna just Google it.
Right.
And we search for mystery. I love watching mystery things online.
Right.
Ooh, it's mostly made up, but still, ooh.
Right. Yeah, there's some appeal. There's an appeal to that element of transcendence and kind of like something beyond our limited selves, and so it's there's a tension there, because again, like I think people criticize people of faith or Christians or just people of faith in general for kind of limiting their knowledge of the world, and faith is sort of like this absence of knowledge, or this kind of stagnancy of intellectual pursuit. And I don't think it has to be sort of like that. I don't think there has to be an oppositional stance between faith and pursuing knowledge. In fact, I mean, in many ways you could say that someone who believes in God, right, they desire to probe the mysteries of God's creation as much as possible.
And let me be clear, when we say, I think my grandparents are excellent examples. They were simple, but they read.
Yeah.
They still read things. They were still literate.
Right.
But they were still really simple, because the things they read were not whatever. They were, so they knew how to read. They were wise, but they weren't. They were simple, but they weren't just bumpkins. They weren't village folk in the sense of like a hick.
Right.
So obviously there's a balance there, but and I think a lot of it has been lost in the modern age. Oh, we've been to the moon. Oh, look at us, how amazing we are.
Yeah. And
then the modern man has the tendency to go, well, if there are aliens out there, we're like the village folk of the universe. We're just meat bags, like that's where modern man goes with whatever. It's a huge topic, isn't it?
It is. Well, and just the promise that's made in a certain sense of like the assumption of like, if I arrive at this kind of like exalted sense of enlightenment on an intellectual basis, then I'll reach sort of my fulfillment and happy state, right? And it seems fairly clear that, statistically speaking and anecdotally speaking, I think our age has seen, an increase in mental health issues, and it's like and yet we're so enlightened supposedly, and and so like this kind of wisdom of like the ages of the kind of like more indigenous folk who are more connected with the earth and more connected with the rhythms of life and death, and
they knew when it was going to rain before the clouds even got there, right?
Yeah, right. What have we lost? T.S. Eliot, the author and poet and wonderful thinker of the 20th century, in one of his longer poems, choruses on the rock or something like that. Anyway, his kind of famous line, he says, "Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information?" I mean, it's like today getting an education. I don't know if I've said this before. I've said it elsewhere. Getting an education today, becoming a lawyer, let's say, is almost, not to bash, being a brain surgeon or whatever, or an astronaut, but essentially you're learning a trade. Right. You're not becoming wise or whole. Right. You're just learning like a plumber learns how to plumb. That's not even a learns how to plumb. Is that a thing? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure. No. I like. Yeah. 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 It's good. I like it. Yep. Me too. So yeah, so great, they became a doctor. What do they know how to do anything else, or what do they think about this topic? Nothing. Right. They're a doctor. That's what they studied. Yep, exactly. They studied to be a doctor. They don't know what, whereas ancient
education, like ancient Greek, but not, long after,
Right.
was holistic. They learned everything, and not
Exactly.
just in the American high school education way, like where they just learn a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they call you rounded.
Right.
But like you immersed yourself in not in in the sciences, let's say.
Yes.
As well as much as they could, of course. Back then there wasn't.
Right.
We didn't have access to the things we have now, but.
Right. So I'm going to do something that I never normally do on the podcast,
Right.
which is actually look something up.
Yeah.
And because, much of this that we're talking about, I think has to do with this book that I've recently come across, which I haven't read, but I've heard some talks from the fellow who wrote it, and it's been highly recommended by some good sources. And it's called The Master and His Emissary. And then the subtitle is The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World. And so just the Wikipedia description is, this book is a 2009 book written by psychiatrist Ian McGilchrist that deals with the specialist hemispheric functioning of the brain. The differing worldviews of the right and left brain, or the master and emissary in the title, respectively, have, according to the author, shaped Western culture since the time of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. And the growing conflict between these views has implications for the way the modern world is changing. In part, McGilchrist's book, which is the product of 20 years of research, reviews the evidence of previous related research and theories, and based on this and cultural evidence, the author arrives at his own conclusions, not confusions.
He arrives at his own confusion.
Right, but basically his thesis, if I've understood it correctly, is that the brain is divided up into two hemispheres, right? There's the right brain and the left brain, and we kind of generally speaking, we understand the right brain is kind of like more humanities based, more kind of like imagination, synthesizing information, and whereas the left brain is more kind of kind of what we would consider to be like the rationalistic, kind of like math side, STEM side of the brain. What's that? What's that?
That side's almost dead in mine. I think the left one. The one.
Yeah, me too.
Math. Yeah.
Exactly. So basically, his argument is that that the way that we sort of like the way that our brain operates is also in some senses a reflection of the way that our society as a whole operates. And he basically is making the argument that the two hemispheres are actually not equal in their operation. In other words, that actually the right brain, from a psychiatric and from a kind of a neuroscience perspective, the right brain is the master, and the left brain is the emissary that does the work of the master. And so the right brain, that there actually isn't an equality and should not be an equality. And yet not only have we sort of tried to equalize them, but we've actually given, preeminence to the left brain and put the right brain in submission and said, oh, humanities, philosophy, religion, all this stuff. That's just, that's not scientific. That's not factual. And so I think it's fascinating because he's a evolutionary psychiatrist. He's a researcher, spent 20 years doing all this research and came to this conclusion from
What is an evolutionary psychiatrist?
Psychiatrist? I have no idea.
Don't look it up.
I have absolutely no clue. No. Psychiatrist who bases his sort of premises on evolution. I have no idea.
Yeah, today the reason you do that is because I don't know, you desire to grow wings. I don't know.
There we go. Oh yeah, exactly.
Through what is it? I don't know. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't come up with a good one.
Yeah. But he talks about like process of elimination, yeah. But yeah, he talks about sort of the as the Wikipedia article says, the evolution of Western culture as influenced by brain functioning, by hemispheric brain functioning, from the ancient world through the Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment, Romanticism, Industrial Revolution to the modern, postmodern worlds. which to our detriment are becoming increasingly dominated by the left brain. So it's just a fascinating kind of scientific look at how we've sort of overemphasized the kind of like rationalistic side.
That's definitely true. I mean, the thing that brings wonder and beauty into the world has been downplayed tremendously. I mean,
almost to the extent that it's like it's not even real. It's just kind of like a coping mechanism, or something, like a just like a romanticized something, it's just like that's not enlightened, that's not scientific,
Yeah, and I mean that was the whole, in a way, Star Trek fans are gonna hate me, but like that's what
the premise.
I like Star Trek, but I like Star Trek a lot, but like I always cringed at the humanism that was seeping from every pore of the show.
For sure.
That was all, and they would always try to add like episodes of wonder, like through art and music, but it always felt so stiff.
Right.
Like with Picard and his love of classical music.
Oh yeah, right. That's right.
Or art. It always just felt so stiff and so, I don't know.
Just like an add-on almost.
Almost. It was weird. But not just that. But not just that. That actually takes me to another point. In Star Trek, in the original show, there's an episode where they get married. There's a couple. There's a wedding. There's a wedding on the Enterprise. And like before that, you see the fascinating Vulcan culture. They show you their fascinating rituals and all this stuff. And then what do humans do? It's just like a blank room, blank walls, and they're in the most boring uniforms you've ever seen in your life.
Right.
And the guy just stands in front of them with a book, and you're like, "Wow, I'm so glad humanity evolved."
I know. Yay, humanity!
Yay, we're so enlightened.
This is so exciting.
It was like, wow, that is boring. We are boring.
But there's a fundamental anxiety about it, I think, or maybe I'm just projecting my own anxiety, but I think there's a fundamental anxiety in this tension, because it gets at this sort of like question of, in our day and age, of who's right, who's right, who's more enlightened, and I think on the one hand I certainly believe and hold to be true that that ultimately as beautiful and as laudable as the pursuit of knowledge and intellectual kind of curiosity is, again, recognizing the primacy of this kind of deeper and more intuitive side, but we don't always feel that way necessarily. And I mean, and I think we're constantly barraged by countering contentions, and I think we're fundamentally caught in this, what Charles Taylor, the philosopher Charles Taylor, calls a cross-pressured world. We're caught in the midst of those kind of opposing viewpoints.
Yeah, creationism versus evolution.
Right.
This versus that. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah, faith versus science.
Faith versus science. I don't know. Math versus art.
Right.
There is definitely a tension and an anxiety. It's not just your projection.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Just making sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was in high school and I did theater. I remember them talking about how, to add more sports, they would cut theater things and art things, art classes, and to add more sports and it's. But there's a great, and I wish I had it open. I don't know, but it was basically it was the life of Saint Silouan by Saint Sophrony. Essex, and Saint Silouan was interesting because he would be sitting there in the monastery and monks would be having a conversation. And
did you finish that, by the way?
I did finish it.
You liked it?
I did. I liked it a lot.
Nice.
It was it definitely needs to read. Saint Sophrony wrote, kind of blew my mind, like every other sentence with it was kind of, once in a while it was over my head.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Trying to wrap around what he's trying to say, because I was reading to a live audience, so I couldn't just stop.
Gotcha. So you read the whole thing to your
yes,
to your live Instagram? Wow,
yes.
that's impressive. It's very impressive.
I need to start doing those again.
Yeah, seriously.
So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I'm gonna try and remember how it went, but something to the where, like, so this one monk was talking about reading the newspaper and how he needs to read the newspaper so he knows what's happening in the world so he can then pray for the world.
Sure.
And Saint Silouan was like, no, you don't need to do that. And I forgot what Saint Silouan said. Forgive me. I forgot what the one thing he said, but basically he kind of gave away in that conversation that he doesn't need to read. He already knows what's happening.
Yeah.
But there was something more he said, and I know it's terrible for me to just not remember what he said exactly, but that little hint that he knew already he didn't need to read.
Right.
And like they started to like probe him a little more, and then he just went silent. You know, like he just like muted himself, like, oh, okay, said too much.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, but he had a point. Like, there's no reason to read the newspaper, and it wasn't just because of some sort of like, you know, he knew.
Right.
I can't remember.
Yeah, and it wasn't an anti-intellectual statement in the sense of kind of like don't be aware.
Yeah, these were monks after all.
Right, but it was. I think you know, I think this is a fundamental point in the sense that sort of like anti-intellectualism says don't be aware of what's going on and just limit yourself to not knowing, right? But the kind of approach that he was taking is actually, it's not that you limit yourself to not knowing, it's actually realizing the limitations of the discursive intellect.
Yeah,
and realizing that that's actually way more limited than the kind of higher faculty of sort of like intuitive knowledge or noetic knowledge.
And I think the other thing, he said something about being in, what was that, the quote I just read you? There's a great quote by Saint Basil the Great. He says,
what does he say? Tell me what he says. I want to know. I need to know.
Let listening to worldly news be bitter food for you, and let the words of saintly men be as combs filled with honey.
Yeah, that's good.
I think always hearing the bad things that are happening,
right,
or hurt you in some way. And I think that was another thing Silouan was also saying, that like you don't always know what they're saying is true.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't know if this is what really happened. And of course, he was living on a different plane of existence.
Yeah, there's that.
You know, casually, just, you know.
But you know, it's the tension in my mind. The tension is the tension of our lives. I mean, it's essentially the question of our lives of you know, what is reality, and you know, does it come down to, you know, this because in my mind in my mind and in my heart, the endless sort of pursuit of intellectual enlightenment is very nihilistic.
Oh yeah.
You know, because it really it's sort of, it's very humanistic. It's very human centric. It gets at that feeling of, well, there are probably these super enlightened aliens out there that put us all to shame, and we're just this kind of like blip on the map and barely mean anything. And so it's like where has our enlightenment led us? It's led us to our own annihilation, essentially. It's led us to and even before biological death, it's led us to this sense of like, we matter. We don't matter. Yeah, nothing matters. We don't matter. Humans don't. Nothing matters. You know, and that's something people have to really grapple with, and I think people have to come to on their own terms, and in a kind of an honorable way, and you know.
I think that I think that also it's led people to doing whatever as hedonistic as possible.
Yes.
Well, whatever, I need to live my life now because once it's over, it's over.
And it's there's a
it's what's marking the age, isn't it? It's what and the age is what, a few hundred, 150.
Right.
What was the age? And since the beginning of the last century.
Right. Yeah.
Let's say. Although we both know that this all goes further back.
Sure.
And in the ways human nature, but never before has human nature, or rather has the overarching thought of an age been so exactly what we just described, leading towards nothing, leading towards although maybe the ancient Greeks, because they didn't believe in a real afterlife, you go to Hades and you just kind of hang out there forever, and it's not great.
Right.
And that regard, Christianity was huge for them, because when they countered it, they were like, what?
Yeah.
Do you mean there's a good ending to this episode? It's not just this, still be a good person, but it doesn't really matter also.
Yeah.
And which is kind of where we are now. Still be a good person, but it doesn't really actually matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's interesting. It's that's a very interesting time, and it's an interesting experience. What
we're living now, I was thinking about this yesterday, just casual deep thoughts in the middle of drinking coffee. I mean, I was like, man, what we're living now, whether it's not good, but let's say whatever, good or bad, it's kind of this is a period, isn't it? It's an
epic, it's an epic
we're
time.
the ones alive now,
right? Seriously, there is something very, very epic about it. But it's. I mean, I think for me, it's just important to acknowledge the challenge, right? To acknowledge the challenge of living in that cross-pressured world of of not having the sort of naivete or innocence, you could say, of the pre-modern era, which again has its minuses for sure, but it also has its pluses in the sense that if you were in a bad situation or a kind of a negative situation, you were just stuck in that, and now there's a little bit more sort of flexibility, I think, to be able to
through medicine or something, or what?
Yeah, it could be through medicine, or even just religiously speaking, if you were stuck in the wrong religion, right, or something like that.
Right. Well, that's what's happening today with so many people who are discovering orthodoxy online. Now that has it's a double-edged sword as well.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
They're even finding out about it.
Exactly.
Was not happening.
Right.
Before.
Exactly. So there are some very, very positive aspects to it, and
so it's not all doom and gloom, right? We're using what we have to show people what. I mean, I imagine all these guys that are discovering orthodoxy now, they're 18, their parents wouldn't have been able to imagine have ever heard of anything like that, or been able to come to know anything like that, or maybe they passed by it, the Greek Orthodox Church, but that's where the Greeks go.
Yeah, exactly.
Which that's a whole other topic.
That is a whole other topic. But no, I think, in many ways, I see it as an invitation for us as citizens of this world and this time to go a little deeper in our own exploration and to be more responsible for our own sort of convictions,
I agree, and I think that there's definitely a good skepticism and a good amount of curiosity.
Right.
Like my dad is a chemical engineer. He was clearly curious as to how things worked, right?
Sure.
But also to also be open to the spiritual and mystical,
Exactly.
And I think that, with the right balance, I think the ancient fathers, granted, they didn't have the access to what we have now, but I think that they kind of perfected that to some extent.
Yeah. They certainly had the intellectual capacity. They far surpassed us, I think, in their ability to memorize.
Yeah, they were like
synthesize and
polymaths. What was the word? Like,
yes, exactly, polymaths. Yeah. Yep.
They were polymaths, but still were like hardcore ascetics living in the desert at the same time.
Exactly. And I always remember, Saint Gregory the theologian and his 5 theological orations. One of the things that I always remember about that is his identifying, like he's basically saying the most reasonable approach, the most reasonable person is the one that includes faith into the picture, right? Like so reason on its own is actually the most irrational and most reasonless sort of approach, but reason combined with faith is actually the most reasonable. And I think that just captures a kind of a beautiful synthesis. And
I mean, even the ancient philosophers, they weren't against God. I mean, they believed in deities. I mean, or one deity. Right. So curiosity in that cat.
Yeah. So there it is. So I guess the answer is yes and no.
I don't know, a healthy balance.
Right. It's like both and, right? It's like
I do think that there's something to be said for limiting, maybe to some extent, the things we consume.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Things we look at, the things that we are immersing ourselves in.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I think all of us, we can limit. Like, did you see the new movie? No, I don't need to consume every single thing that they, spit out.
Yep. And kind of keeping slowing down a little bit, and settling into
slowing down. You don't need to know every inch of theology. Trust me, it's not easy.
Right. It's not only not easy, but it's inexhaustible, and you'll never know everything anyway. So
yeah. Remember how big God is?
Right. Exactly.
He's so big. What are you going to figure out?
Exactly. So it's like, go for it. Like, learn, know, but not in this kind of
you're not gonna transcend reality by knowing all this stuff. At some point, to kind of, unless you're gonna actually teach or something. But we all need to learn how to pray and how to fast. I think that the actually doing what we are talking about is what the fathers of the church did. Saint John Chrysostom, he actually hurt himself.
Yes.
He's your who you're studying.
Yeah.
Better than I do. He hurt himself doing what he preached.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I'm not saying anybody should go out there and hurt themselves, obviously. But
right.
I'm giving an example of like an ascetic who was a brilliant genius in the true sense of a genius, not in this weird, but also was an incredible ascetic. So
Yep, exactly. So the active life, the life of like experiential knowledge and well, that's good stuff, man.
I always enjoy it.
Likewise. Thank you for good conversation.
Indeed. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to pause it here.
Okay. Oh, we can stop.
Yeah, let's stop.
Oh, we should say goodbye.
Yes, let's say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.
In proper Trisagion, perfect podcast.
Yes.
TrisagionFilms and perfect podcast. Whatever. Goodbye, everyone.
Until next time.
Until next time.
All right.
Fade to music.
Stop.